OMG, I just found out my best friend who I love wants to keep me in her life, but I can't hold on while trying to move on. Exploding head. I am seeking guidance, but this request comes with a considerable amount of necessary background information. First and foremost, I, 25 years old, male, want to mention that I have been best friends with someone I will refer to as Sally, 25 years old, female, since I was approximately 16 years old. We have a significant history together, and I have consistently harbored feelings for her. Early on, I confessed my feelings, but she did not reciprocate. Consequently, we ended up not communicating for about a year. When we re-established contact, I was overjoyed to have my closest friend back, so I vowed to myself that I would not allow my deeper feelings for her to interfere with our friendship. I erected emotional barriers and stored my feelings away, content to have her in my life in any manner. Now, let me share some more recent events. For reasons that are somewhat irrelevant, after not being in touch for roughly 2 years, we reconnected when I was 19. After returning home from college, I dined at a restaurant where she was my server. Our reconnection filled me with happiness, and I kept my feelings under wraps. We spoke every day and spent time together almost regularly, in a platonic manner. Our bond strengthened to a level we had never experienced before. However, when summer break ended, I returned to school, but we maintained frequent communication. One day, she mentioned her desire to visit me, which required her to drive about 3 hours. When she came, I was thrilled to show her around my campus and spend time with her. One evening during her visit, she revealed that she had developed feelings for me since our reunion at the restaurant. I had been completely unaware of this throughout our time together. One thing led to another, and we crossed the line from friendship to something more. However, for various reasons, we agreed to keep things casual. I was somewhat apprehensive about allowing my emotional walls to come crashing down, although in hindsight, that process had already started. We decided that we would maintain our friends with benefits arrangement without presenting ourselves as a couple outside of our intimate encounters. However, she didn't strictly adhere to this agreement, greeting me with kisses and holding my hand in public. Being somewhat weak, I followed her lead, as I truly desired to be in a relationship with her. Then, one day, she unexpectedly distanced herself. Our daily conversations significantly dwindled, despite my efforts to keep in touch. She continued to withdraw to the point where my best friend began feeling like a stranger. She would occasionally invite me over during her panic attacks or tough days, but these visits became infrequent. I started to feel like her emergency boyfriend, someone she turned to only when she needed comfort, and this situation was weighing heavily on me. Eventually, I reached my limit and decided to express my feelings. I told her she was the most significant person in my life, and that I couldn't continue feeling as if the relationship was primarily one-sided. I requested she become my girlfriend, hoping this would address the imbalance. She declined, appearing almost offended by my wish for a relationship, and asked for some space. I was heartbroken and deeply confused since she had never communicated her feelings or the reasons behind her distancing. In an attempt to move on, we ceased all contact. Fast forward 2 years, and I encountered her at a local bar. The interaction was brief. Admittedly, I had developed some resentment during our 2 years of silence due to how she had treated me toward the end of our relationship. I realize now that I did not explain this well earlier, but by the end, she had been extremely cold in her rejection, making me, the most important person in her life, feel small and insignificant. 2 nights after running into her, she texted asking if I could meet her at her apartment to talk since there were many things she felt were left unsaid. I agreed somewhat reluctantly, though I was curious about what she wanted to discuss. The conversation unfolded in a manner entirely different from my expectations. She expressed all the right sentiments, and I forgave her, no longer holding on to any resentment. However, I made it abundantly clear to her that my emotional defenses were gone, and I couldn't merely remain her friend, as I realized that it would not be long before that arrangement would not suffice. My feelings for her had never truly waned. I left her apartment with the closure I had been seeking for the past 2 years. However, that was not the conclusion of our story. The following morning, she initiated a FaceTime call, which continued daily for the next month. I felt as though I was in a dream. I was elated to have her back in my life. She made everything else feel trivial. This month felt like an infinite span of time. I believed she must be open to exploring where our relationship could lead, as she understood my desire for more than friendship. I could not have been more mistaken. As with the prior instance 2 years ago, she became increasingly distant while seemingly trying to keep me engaged. In a final effort, I asked if I could take her out for a belated Valentine's Day dinner. She had been out of town on the actual day, and she agreed. I was overjoyed and began searching for the perfect gifts while planning an unforgettable evening. I thought perhaps her distance was simply a misconception on my part. Sadly, I was mistaken. Upon her return, she avoided confirming a date for dinner, prompting me to inquire why she had agreed in the first place. This resulted in her expressing that while she had love for me, she still was not ready for a relationship. Devastated once more, I wished she had communicated this sooner to spare me the buildup of hope over the past month. She requested space again and mentioned she would call me in a few weeks. When that call finally arrived, she dropped the bombshell that she was relocating out of state. This revelation stunned me and left me heartbroken. To make such a life-changing decision and spring it upon me felt overwhelming. I resolved to prioritize my own well-being and told her, with a heavy heart, that I needed to extricate myself from her life, as being with her only led to pain. She did not agree, insisting she wanted to remain friends, but I simply could not entertain that notion. I bid her farewell, taking one last opportunity to convey how special she was to me, and then I blocked her on all platforms. 6 months later, in a state of inebriation, I unblocked her. I didn't reach out, I simply unblocked her. This is where the timeline becomes relevant. She texted me, and lacking the resolve to ignore her, I engaged in a 5-hour phone call. During our conversation, she expressed her desire for me to be part of her life again, given our history as best friends. I responded that, as much as I would like that, my feelings for her remain, and I understood that she did not share those feelings. For this reason, it was too painful for me to remain in her life, as I would never be able to move on while holding on to the hope that one day we could be together. She claimed she could not comprehend this, and even implied it was unreasonable of me, suggesting that my reluctance to simply be friends was inappropriate. I did my best to clarify that it was not that friendship was inadequate. Rather, it was so fulfilling that I wouldn't allow myself to pursue other relationships in hopes that we could eventually reconnect romantically. Our phone call ended with me stating that I would keep her number unblocked, but I remain uncertain about how to proceed. I genuinely want to support her and be a part of her life, but I am aware that this could exhaust me emotionally, a concern I raised multiple times during our extensive conversation. She texted me again last night, inquiring if I had reached any conclusions regarding our potential path forward. She desires our friendship. Is there a way to maintain this friendship without compromising my mental health or my ability to move on? In summary, I am deeply in love with my best friend of nearly a decade. We went through a phase that resembled a romantic relationship, but it concluded because I wanted to make it official while she did not. Can I genuinely be her friend without undermining my ability to move forward? Story 2. OMG. My GF is pregnant from a one-night stand just as we were thinking of a future together while I'm grieving my mom. What now? I, a 33-year-old female, met my girlfriend, also 33, when we were in school. We have been acquainted for 22 years. We shared a close bond during our childhood, but we experienced significant conflicts during our teenage years, resulting in a prolonged period of silence between us. During that time, my girlfriend married at the age of 21 and had 2 children. She reached out to me again while expecting her second child, and we quickly rekindled our friendship. When she married, she relocated 3.5 hours away from our hometown, and I never got the chance to visit her. When I finally did, it became painfully clear that she was in a mentally and physically abusive marriage and was struggling to manage 2 small children without support from her family or friends. Over the years, I began spending increasing amounts of time with her, ultimately helping her to leave her abusive husband, who is 40 years old. We started communicating regularly and spending more time together, even going on vacation with the children. One day, she confessed her deep love for me, which left me in disbelief, as I had long viewed myself as unlovable. I suffer from severe depression and anxiety, and at that moment, I was filled with self-loathing. It took nearly 6 months for me to agree to enter a relationship with her because I was uncertain if her feelings were genuine or if she was simply emotionally unstable. Our first year together was wonderful. Although we still lived far apart, we maintained a strong connection, something I had never experienced with anyone before. To be frank, she was my first romantic relationship, and I was her first same-sex relationship, making everything feel fresh and novel. However, as time passed, issues began to arise. She frequently requested guidance with disciplining the children, but when I attempted to intervene, it often frustrated her, or she would contradict my approach, such as allowing her daughter to eat an excessive amount of snacks for breakfast. Her parenting style seemed quite laid back. Things reached a breaking point during a camping trip. The tent malfunctioned on the first day, forcing me to purchase a new one and set it up myself because she was not contributing. From that point forward, she began attributing more and more blame to me. Complaints about the children's hunger, a lack of sunscreen, and forgetting drinks in the car continued to mount. I was managing most of the childcare to allow her some respite, even taking the kids for half a day so she could have several hours alone. Yet if I dared to take a brief moment for myself, she would criticize me. I acknowledged that I frequently became angry during this time. I was hypersensitive to any critique and misinterpreted some of her comments. Eventually, we had a massive conflict, mutually concluded that we were not suited for a relationship, and decided to break up. We maintained contact because I care about the children and wanted to stay informed about how they were doing. A few months later, while visiting a friend nearby, I also stopped by to see her. She had made significant progress, was on medication, and was beginning to return to her former self. Gradually, we resumed our friendship, and it was during this time that she apologized, took responsibility for her actions, and expressed a desire to rekindle our relationship. I was cautious because we both were not in the best mental state, so we agreed to take a break. Several months later, she expressed a desire to start dating other people due to her feelings of loneliness, and I agreed. We remained very close friends, but I noticed her mental health declining again. She became heavily involved in fitness, dedicating 5 days a week and spending substantial money on personal training, seemingly enjoying the attention. While I wanted to support her and felt proud of her, I grew concerned that it was bordering on obsession. Our daily communication dwindled to weeks without contact. I took a step back, deciding to let her reach out if she wanted to engage, and if that did not happen, it would indicate that it was not meant to be. I was aware she was experimenting with drugs and engaging in promiscuous behavior, but nothing I said seemed to change her course. After about a month of this, I received a call from her neighbor informing me that she had been taken to the hospital with a suspected brain injury or stroke. I immediately dropped everything and drove to the hospital, where I spent a week caring for her children while seeking help for her. It was later revealed that she had developed schizophrenia and had experienced a severe mental breakdown. She was nonverbal and unresponsive for over 2 months and spent 4 months in a psychiatric facility. At that time, we had no idea what was happening. All I knew was that I rushed to be by her side, only to learn later that she had been speaking poorly of me, blaming me for everything. Her living conditions were appalling, with bags of spoiled food and filthy bedsheets. The children were placed with her mother during her hospitalization, and I lost contact with everyone for 3 months as her family excluded me, despite being the only person who visited her in the hospital. Eventually, she was placed on proper medication and regained her memory, albeit with a 4-month gap. I was the first person she reached out to upon her return, and the first face she remembered. That year, we engaged in several deep conversations about our feelings for each other. She expressed her love for me and her desire to be in a relationship. I certainly love her, but was hesitant to commit again due to my past experiences with her. She attributed a lot of her previous behavior to her schizophrenia, a perspective with which I do not entirely concur. Regardless, we began to grow close again, and we were intimate in July. A month or so later, she asked if we were officially in a relationship, and I responded ambiguously, stating that it was complicated and that we should not commit until we had completed counseling. In the months that followed, I received the devastating news that my dog, who was like a son to me, had cancer and was nearing death. He passed away on November 1, leaving me heartbroken. My girlfriend supported me wholeheartedly during this time, grieving alongside me for the loss of my beloved pet. We spent Christmas together, which was a comforting experience. Then, the worst possible event occurred. My mother passed away suddenly and unexpectedly 2 weeks ago. She was my everything. We shared an incredibly close bond, and to be honest, I am struggling to cope with her death. My girlfriend arrived immediately without needing to be asked and spent the last 2 weeks with me, looking after me as I wept profoundly. We discussed the possibility of moving in together, creating a genuine family unit. We came to the realization that we truly love each other and want to spend our lives together. Then she revealed that she was pregnant. She had a one-night stand in September, which she had concealed from everyone. To be fair, we were not officially together at that time, but we were quite close. My girlfriend feels that she cannot have another child and wishes to terminate the pregnancy. I told her I would support her, and we agreed to discuss everything afterward. We visited the clinic today, where the medical professionals indicated she is actually 7.5 months pregnant. This timeline places the one-night stand right when we were contemplating getting back together, but we are still unsure. Now, I find myself in a complicated situation, deeply in love with her and the children, grappling with the loss of my entire world within 2 months, facing potential homelessness, financial ruin, and the prospect of being involved with another person's child. I assured her that I would be there for her, and she insists that her encounter with someone else was a one-time event and that she mismanaged the timeline due to her poor memory. However, I need to ascertain whether I am being foolish in this situation. I want to add that I feel incredibly comfortable with her. She has been supportive both emotionally and financially. She has improved significantly on her medication, and I believe our relationship has grown stronger. Moreover, I genuinely care for those children. I have watched them grow, and they consider me a second parent. Story 3. I left an abusive 5-year relationship and found true love a week later, finally free to be myself. What a difference 7 months makes. I, a 21-year-old male, have been in a relationship with my boyfriend, whom I shall refer to as Nicholas, who is 20 years old, for the past few months. Prior to dating him, I was involved with another man, whom I will call Jorge, who is 23 years old, for 5 years. It is also important to mention that I am a transgender man. In summary, I concluded a 5-year relationship with an abusive transphobe, ended things with him, and began a new relationship with a man who treats me significantly better just 1 week after the breakup. Jorge and I started dating during high school and continued into our early adult years. I was 16 at the time and he was 18. He was essentially a rebound for me, which was not the wisest decision, and I was a rebound for him as well. He had just come out of a heterosexual relationship a month prior, as had I. At 16, I was naive about what love truly meant. He had planned to break up with me shortly after graduating high school, but that clearly did not occur. While our relationship was decent, he never referred to me by my chosen name and repeatedly used my birth name as well as she/her pronouns. It was acceptable when we were around family that was unaware of my transgender identity, but he persisted in using them even when it was just the two of us. I often felt more like a girlfriend than a boyfriend, which forced me to conform to that role. As young individuals, I was especially vulnerable. I dealt with significant feelings of abandonment and insecurity, making it challenging to be alone, and I desired to feel valued, which is why I prolonged the relationship. However, Jorge was not the ideal partner. He never took the time to learn about my interests or the types of clothing I preferred, mistakenly believing that expensive gifts would make me happy. He often used the high cost of his gifts as leverage against me, accusing me of being ungrateful and reminding me of how much he spent. He still lived with his parents and did not contribute to any rent, so he could afford these gifts. For example, one Christmas, I requested a specific bag and even sent him pictures, specifically an aita bag. For those unfamiliar, it is a bag with a plastic window and a small backboard designed for displaying pins and keychains. I needed a new one because I had amassed a significant amount of merchandise from my favorite novel that I wanted to showcase. Despite my clear request, he bought me a $400 Michael Kors bag simply because I mentioned wanting a bag, completely disregarding the images I had sent. He claimed it was too hard to find what I wanted, despite me providing over 20 links to bags I found cute, none costing more than $20. This grievance is not about the materialism, but rather how little attention he paid to me as an individual. Financially, I often struggled. My parents could not assist me since I was a full-time college student and worked full-time while also caring for 3 other children at home and contributing to my tuition expenses. Occasionally, he would send me an extra $50 for Wi-Fi or other needs, only to follow up by shaming me for being financially challenged. I often felt neglected. Jorge never truly got to know me, nor did he make an effort to call me by my desired name. I once asked him if he would still love me if I began transitioning. He replied that his feelings would change and I would become someone else. That conversation shattered my heart, and as a result, I delayed my transition until 2024. I never wore a binder or started hormone therapy. I presented myself as femininely as possible because any hint of masculinity would distance him from me. My family didn't dislike him, but they rarely inquired about him, often viewing him as a slacker, particularly my father, who is a teacher at our local high school and had been Jorge's instructor. There were moments when I faced the risk of assault from him. I still flinch at the sight of a red Toyota Tacoma. Reflecting on this now, I realize that leaving him for someone else might not have been an awful decision. In February 2024, I ended my relationship with him, and within 2 weeks, I started dating someone new. As mentioned, his name is Nicholas. I met him in September 2023 through a friend who was visiting my city for a popular convention in my state. Both Nicholas and I enjoy cosplaying, so our meeting was not entirely coincidental. My friend brought him along because his wife was unable to attend, and he required assistance with a cumbersome cosplay. We clicked immediately. I listened intently as he spoke passionately about his favorite band, an experience unlike any other. Almost right away, he began to learn about me. Our first outing together was at a convention in his home state, where Nicholas required someone to play a specific character to match his for a photo shoot. The characters in question are canonically married. By this time, we had been conversing for months, both eager about the convention and, admittedly, a bit flirtatious. Nicholas learned more about me in 3 months than Jorge did in 5 years. He used my name and pronouns correctly, and when I visited him for the convention, he surprised me with a keychain that matched his token representing my favorite characters from my favorite book. This was something my ex could never manage to do, nor would he ever put in that effort. My ex once yelled at me for purchasing him a souvenir from a convention related to his favorite character from a childhood anime, claiming I wasted my money on something useless. Conversely, Nicholas treasured every item I gifted him, even in our early days when we both insisted we were merely friends. Eventually, while he was a little tipsy one night, Nicholas admitted that he had feelings for me and wanted to pursue a relationship. Though taken aback, I felt a wave of happiness at the prospect, as I had never experienced such genuine emotions toward another person before, an emotion focused on someone caring for me rather than fearing abandonment. With my ex, every argument immediately raised concerns about a forthcoming breakup. Nicholas truly cares about my feelings and supports me as a person, not merely someone to manipulate. In contrast, whenever I had a meltdown, Jorge would simply wait in another room until my tears subsided, refusing to come in and comfort me, even during extended crying spells. Nicholas, however, would enter the room, lay alongside me, and I would find relief from my tears almost instantly. He understood how to calm me, recognized my interests, and encouraged my transition while also suggesting therapy to address my abandonment fears. During the brief time we have been together, I have yet to feel anxious about him leaving me. We had one minor disagreement regarding dinner plans, but it hardly qualifies as an argument. Soon, we will celebrate a year together. I am currently 7 months into hormone therapy. Without Nicholas's support, I doubt I would have reached this stage and might have ended up marrying a straight man who sought a traditional wife to settle down and have children with. When I ended my relationship with my ex, he informed me that he was only a year away from proposing as I had always desired, and implored me to reconsider. When he asked if I had found someone else, I chose not to disclose that I had. I simply wished for him to move on and leave me be. After 5 years of emotional turmoil, I still feel guilty for breaking his heart. He told me he would call after a year to check in on me. Honestly, part of me wishes he would. I want him to hear how much my voice has deepened and how much happier I have become. While my current relationship has not yet reached a full year, I am certain that I will marry Nicholas. He is on the aromantic and asexual spectrum, expressing that he never anticipated experiencing romantic feelings. He tells me daily that he has never felt love until he met me, identifying himself as yaosexual, indicating that I am the only person to whom he is romantically or otherwise attracted. So, am I the antagonist for ending a 5-year relationship to pursue another? Story 4. I kissed my best friend's bride-to-be in a hot tub after drinking. She didn't remember, but I lost 2 friends over it. What now? I am a man in my 20s who kissed the bride-to-be during a wedding where I served as a groomsman. This story begins with my 2 best friends, R and L, inviting me to participate as a groomsman in their wedding. Upon receiving the news, I was thrilled for both of them. They genuinely complement each other, and I care for them deeply. However, fast forward to 5 months ahead of the wedding date, I was invited to an after-party following a night out at the bar. I joined some friends, including the bride-to-be and the fiancé's sister, as we headed to a hot tub after some drinks. During this after-party, I engaged in some recreational usage of THC and consumed even more alcohol. While relaxing in the hot tub, L, the bride-to-be, and I began chatting privately in a corner while sipping on Fireball. At one point, she commented on how unattractive she appeared with her makeup running due to the water, to which I replied, "You're not unattractive, you are beautiful," a typical exchange for us. She then asked me to wipe the eyeliner from under her eyes, which I did. Afterward, she took my hand and mentioned that in 20 years, if we were both single, we would get married. This surprised me, prompting a response along the lines of, "Hey, you are getting married in 5 months, so that won't happen," she said. "It doesn't matter if we are with other people before then, but let's pinky promise that we can marry if we are single." She extended her pinky, and I agreed to the promise. After a brief ritual of kissing our thumbs, we pressed them together. As the sun began to rise, we watched the sunrise with 3 other friends who were also present, while the groom was absent due to work commitments. It is important to note that our friends in the hot tub overheard our conversation. As we admired the sunrise, she intertwined her fingers with mine, something we had not done before, given its intimacy in light of our prior conversation. Initially, I pulled my hand away, but she insisted I keep holding it. When she inquired, "Did you mean it?" referring to our earlier talk, I, perhaps influenced by the alcohol, replied affirmatively. "Okay then," she responded, resting her arm on my shoulder, a gesture that was not unusual in our friendship. As she floated in the hot tub with her arms still draped over my shoulder, I crouched in the middle of the tub. I placed one hand on the small of her back and the other behind her knees, remaining respectful as I did not want her to drown or lose consciousness. She bent her knees, positioning herself comfortably in my hold, and without any warning, she pulled me in by my head and kissed me. It was a brief peck, but stunned and shocked, I glanced around at our companions in the hot tub, none of whom seemed to notice. Just when I began to ease back into the moment, she pulled me in for a second time, this time a real kiss. After quickly checking our surroundings again and confirming that no one seemed aware, I set her down. She then situated herself in a corner, and I realized I had made a significant misjudgment because she suddenly passed out, presumably due to the alcohol. I now felt incredibly guilty for kissing my best friend, who was about to get married, and for the fact that she had become completely drunk. This left me feeling like the villain who took advantage of a vulnerable woman. My friend and I lifted her from the hot tub, and the sister of the fiancé took her inside the house. My friend and I cleaned up our bottles and trash, and in my quiet shock and confusion, I decided to tell him about what happened that night. He simply said, "I know, we all heard the conversation. I'm not going to say anything." I replied, "No, that's not it. It's something else, we kissed." His only response was a drawn-out, "Oh no." The following day, I received a call from Elle, the bride-to-be. I answered immediately, hearing her sister in the car with her as Elle asked, "Hey, I don't remember anything from last night. Can you tell me what happened?" I explained our earlier conversation about the 20-year promise while omitting the kisses. She laughed it off, saying that it was typical of her. Then the conversation took an odd turn. Elle asked, Is there anything else you need to tell me about last night? This struck me as strange because if she couldn't recall the previous night, why would she inquire further? After summarizing the events, I replied, "Nope, that's it," said goodbye, and tried to distract myself with some billiards. While there, I bumped into R, the groom-to-be, and feeling awkward and inept, I couldn't find the courage to discuss the prior night with him. After a few games, I left and sent Elle a message stating that I needed to speak to her alone. She called, and I confessed that we had kissed twice the previous night. She insisted she needed to tell R, and I agreed, feeling terrible that I had just played pool with him without revealing that I had kissed his fiancée the night before. The entire day passed without any communication from either of them. I even canceled my RSVP for the wedding, overwhelmed by the thought of attending, and texted Elle that it might be best if we stopped talking. Still, there was no reply. Later, I sent another message asking, "Are you sure you don't remember anything from last night?" Again, there was no response, and I went to bed. Fast forward to this morning, I woke up to a lengthy text from R, the groom, expressing how terrible of a person I am, claiming that I would never achieve anything and instructing me to never contact them again. He expressed disbelief that he ever wanted me as part of his wedding and accused me of taking advantage of his inebriated fiancée. The weight of this situation sank in, and I realized I had lost two of my closest friends. This was not a mere drunken mistake, it was a harsh reality. I immediately blocked them on all platforms and penned a timeline of events to aid my memory while writing this. To my knowledge, the wedding is still scheduled. I am unsure what R confided in Elle, but it seems he grasped the situation. Summary: I made a mistake by getting heavily intoxicated and kissing my friend, who is marrying soon, in an intimate manner, resulting in the loss of two friends and likely more.